Today we're gonna have we have as our guest speaker Heather Austin, and we're very excited to hear from her actually. And Becca will go over her bio and we'll be able to introduce her to all of you. Okay.
Aloha, everyone. So, Heather Miles Austin is the managing director of the Ferraro Group's Phoenix office, which is a regional public relations and public affairs firm that has offices in Phoenix, Las Vegas, Reno, and Washington, D.C. Heather's responsibilities include overseeing public relations and social media strategy, crisis communications, internal communications, media relations, and community relations for a variety of clients, including Dunkin' Donuts, Arizona and New Mexico, Six Flags Hurricane Harbor Phoenix, Icenegix, Navajo Gaming, Master Plan Communities in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, Scorpion Bay Marina, Desert Troon Companies, Western Wealth Capital, and Mark Taylor Residential. Heather frequently advises C-suite executives and HR teams on best ways to maintain culture amidst crisis, boost morale, strengthen internal teams proactively, communicate organization opportunities and challenges. She's also a current board member for East Valley Partnership, and Miss Austin has also volunteered with Valley of the Sun United Way and the Arizona Dental Mission of Mercy. She's also a previous board member of CARE Partnership, a Chair Leadership Academy graduate, and a proud graduate of Northern Arizona University.
Thank you, Becca. Heather, you have quite a background and quite some very good clients. So yeah, I'll turn the time to you. And thank you again for joining us.
Well, thank you, Becca, for that great intro, and thank you so much for the prayer. That it's different to have someone pray over you and pray over your family when you're away, and I really appreciate how thoughtful that prayer was. I'm going to jump in and share my screen. See if that comes across.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. All right. So it's been actually a really interesting opportunity. So thank you for this opportunity to really look back at some of the crazy and the good, the bad, the ugly that we've been able to lead and to be a part of the last couple of years, especially this last year. And COVID has affected every business, nonprofit, every organization. They've really had to look at the way they do things, the way they serve their clients or their customers, and how they keep their team strong and safe. And so it's been really interesting as a leader, and then as someone who gets to advise leaders and help them look at future trends and what's coming forward to help them to stay in front of things and on top of things. So we're going to talk about birds a little bit. Birds are really interesting. You see this guy's out in the storm, and sometimes I don't know if you've ever seen birds out in the storm. You're wondering, why are they just sitting there? Why aren't they flying away, or why aren't they taking shelter? And sometimes they do, but a lot of times in a light rainstorm, birds might just hang out because they pretty much make their wings and their feathers waterproof by a lot of work and effort, and the way they clean them, and the way they get some oil from a gland, and work to care for their feathers, so that for mild storms they can really just kind of hang out, a lot of them. But what happens when there is a hurricane? Some birds react really differently in really crazy weather situations. Some hunker down, they might find shelter under rocks or a bridge. Some of them actually go into the eye of the hurricane, and you'll have whole flocks of birds that are just in the middle of the eye of the hurricane trying to get some relief. You'll have others that fly straight through the hurricane, and they prepare a lot ahead of time. They'll eat a lot of food, try to get a lot of fat built up, strength build up, and then they'll fly through the hurricane. And then others use the hurricane winds to speed them on their migration. So they'll use the fast winds at the front of the hurricane and get them to where they want to go a little bit quicker. And I thought that was really interesting as we look at challenges and deciding when the storms hit with our company and our personal lives, what are we going to do? Are we going to hunker down? Are we going to hide? Are we going to use these uncertain times to push us forward to the places we want to go? or sometimes we're just going to do the best we can, prepare as much as we can, and just try to fly through it. So I've really found that with clients, the most important thing that they need to do is they've got to decide who they are, what their vision is, and where they want to go. And that, if clients or personally we can't decide that, when the storms hit, we're just going to be blown to and fro, and we're going to end up in some random place, like some of those birds, and some of them can get back and some of them can. And so we don't want that to be ourselves personally, and we don't want that to be that if we're running a business or a part of a leadership team. So first we need to figure out where we want to be, who we are, and what we stand for. And as we do that, we really want to kind of plan, prepare, and strengthen. And we found with teams, big or small, it doesn't matter if you're a huge corporation like Dunkin' Donuts, or if you're a small organization like maybe a local home builder, or you're starting your own online company, you need to create a plan. You need a plan for the worst. You need to look at, okay, here's the type of organization I am or nonprofit that I am. What are all the horrible things that could happen? I know that sounds kind of negative, but it's actually really good. If you think about the types of things that might happen to you personally or as a company, and then you make plans to prepare for it, it helps you to have confidence. And so with our clients, we research all sorts of different scenarios. We help them train, we help them communicate. They have messaging, whether it's a fire, whether it's a shooting, whether it's every natural disaster, every horrible thing that could happen. We help them prepare for that, know what they're going to do and what they're going to say. And they typically designate what we call a response team. And this a lot of times is your leadership team. And they're your go-to. They're the ones that when the crap hits the fan, they're the ones that are going to be steady and solid, and you know you can count on them to not panic and to follow through. And then we practice. And so with your teams, once you've got these crazy scenarios that you've come up with, you do mock training all the time, and you practice, what are we going to do if this happens? And then you evaluate and kind of revise that. And this response team, we have found with our clients, is the most important thing. Sometimes people put all their executives on the response team. And sometimes you find out all your executives are not great in a crisis situation. Some of them might be very dramatic or prone to panic or whatever it is. So you need to really choose that response team, your emergency teams, really carefully. And they need to reflect either both your team and the people that you're trying to serve. So if I am serving, or my clients or customers are really young, teenagers or college age, and then everyone on my response team looks like me or older, that's a problem, because we don't know how to properly communicate, or maybe how to best reach those individuals. Or if everyone I serve is 70 years old, I need to make sure I've got a couple 70-year-olds on the team. I need to make sure that I look at culture, I look at age, I look at where they live in the country or in the world, so that I'm being mindful of the ways they want to communicate, the ways they might react with different cultural or religious backgrounds to different situations, because that can be really different. And I don't want to propose that an individual or group does a certain thing that goes against their religious beliefs or might conflict with something that's really important to them culturally. So making sure that that response team reflects those that you're trying to serve, and also your team. It's really important. You can get in a lot of trouble if you don't do that. And before the crap hits the fan, you need to make sure that you have really strengthened your internal team. And we do this in a lot of fun ways with different clients. We look at their culture and how we can make their mission and vision come to life. We make sure they are communicating all the time and that they're living it and rewarding it. The worst thing you can have is to have leadership that does not reflect your mission and vision. And you say you're these things and you do these nice things, and then you have people that don't do that or live that. That really hurts everyone going down, and your customers and everyone start to see that and they feel that. So it's important that you surround yourself as a leader with other leaders that want to end up the same place you want to end up, and that they can live kind of those ideals or work towards them. It's also really important. We found that sounds really simple, but saying thank you and expressing gratitude is one of the best ways to strengthen a team. You don't have to take them to the baseball game, once a month. You don't have to go bowling. You don't have to give them fancy gold pens whenever they, earn something else. Sharing gratitude verbally and written in front of their peers and in private is one of the best ways that you can kind of strengthen that team so that when the storms hit, they will rally together and they will rally behind you. And we've also looked during COVID all sorts of ways to try to creatively connect. So whether it's pumpkin carving, we had an ugly sweater contest with some of our clients, virtual talent shows, they were giving out prizes, and there were some very interesting talents that came to light. But looking at ways, even with restrictions, even with COVID, trying to get your team to connect with each other, that really helps them to want to go to bat for each other and to want to go to bat for you. And this is really, all these steps are really how you're kind of waterproofing your wings so that when you do need to fly out in the rain, you do need to fly out in the storm, it's not going to affect you as much. It's going to allow you to at least get to where you want to go, even if that's a temporary location, while you kind of reassess. The other most important thing you can do during a crisis situation is listen. And we've had a lot of leaders say, I don't have time to listen. Like, literally, my business is falling apart. I'm losing customers right and left. I have employees that are leaving because they're doing other things. I do not have time to listen. But if you, before the storm and during the storm, if you find ways to listen both to your team members and to your clients, it will save you so many headaches. And it helps to make sure that as you're trying to do a pivot in a crisis, that you're pivoting the right way, that you're not just leaning on your own assumptions and then ending up somewhere that, well, none of your team members and none of your customers wanted to be, so you find yourself all alone as a leader of one. Okay, so feedback is a gift. We have a lot of CEOs that hate to read their reviews. They don't want to take employee surveys because sometimes they don't want to hear everyone moaning and groaning, but a lot of times they're really kind of undercurrent moaning and groaning, whether it's on reviews or whether it's with your employees. That helps you to know of larger issues that are brewing, and it helps you to kind of cut them off at the pass. So we always say, whether positive or negative, feedback really is a gift, and it helps leaders to make the best decisions. So you've got to kind of let your ego go, shake off your pride, and you got to listen to people even when they tell you things that are hard to hear. We do a lot with our clients in social media and responding to reviews and listening to reviews, and we tell them to respond to every review and to look at every review and make sure that they are really understanding. Yes, a lot of people go on Yelp to complain about your burger because they want a free burger, but sometimes if enough people are complaining about the same part of your burger, you might want to switch the lettuce out for bacon or whatever it might be. So you can start to look at trends amongst some people, even if you think they're whining, whether it's an employee or a customer. That information can really help you to make the changes that you should for small things before it becomes really huge and you end up having a big misstep as a business leader. And we say 88% of consumers, they trust those online reviews more. So sometimes a lot of times more important than your marketing is the responses that they see you make to people's reviews. Even if you don't resolve stuff, just you responding and listening and acknowledging, it goes a long way for your customers. Okay. Your most valuable resource are your team members. So really listening to your employees. We'll look at different companies and provide them different recommendations for how they can have regular and ongoing listening sessions or opportunities for their employees to get feedback. It's not just saying, oh, here's an email. Anytime you have feedback throughout the year, please send us your ideas. It needs to be both formal and informal. Most of our clients, we recommend that they do third-party surveys so they have someone else who is able to anonymously understand what their employees think about them in a variety of areas. You can assess operations, you can assess the ability to move up, you can assess retention, all sorts of things. And sometimes it's good to be digital and sometimes it's in person if it allows with COVID. We have some of our clients who every month they have something called a clubhouse chat where they do a bunch of updates with their community managers for 65 different communities in Arizona and Nevada. And then they'll always have an opportunity within that for people to give feedback. And what I really like is not just to say, Sam or Becca, tell me how you're feeling today. It's Sam or Becca, I've got this problem or I've got this opportunity. What are your ideas? How would you address it? We've got looking at the lake. We have, people are always renting boats on Wednesday. They're not renting boats on Thursday or Friday. So putting out operational challenges to not just people that are over operations, but your whole team. A lot of times you'll be surprised at the solutions that you get from every level of the organization. So I always like to say, seek with a purpose, put those challenges and opportunities out there for people to give feedback, listen to what they're saying. Don't just say, hey, is there anything you want to complain about? Give them opportunities to become a part of the team and to share their ideas and experiences, and it will strengthen your team. And a lot of times you'll get a gem of an idea that you and the rest of the leadership team would have never thought of because they're in a different position than you. And it also helps you to identify kind of succession management, like I need to put that person in a management position. They've consistently come up with great ideas that are totally out of their scope, but it shows that they're a creative problem solver. It shows that they're really listening to our customer. And then it gives you ideas for people that you can promote and strengthen your leadership team. All right, the last thing during times of crisis, during times of change, is to do good. And this sounds really simple, but a lot of companies were paralyzed during COVID and they just were trying to survive. And fortunately, we were able to work with several companies that we were able to convince them, and some of them, this was already their culture, so we didn't have to do a lot of convincing, but to look for ways to do good, small and big, in their community. And times of crisis are a time for companies to shine. They are a time for you to shine, to show what you're made of, to show that you care about your community, that you care about your customers. And whether it doesn't need to be something really big that I get a lot of TV exposure for the client, it can be small. We're dropping off meals to healthcare workers from the master plan communities. We're giving free coffee and donuts to teachers and to nurses and to firefighters and to anyone else who's affected. We did a lot of meals through all the states to people, and it wasn't stuff that we saw a lot of recognition for. It was just ways to strengthen the communities that our clients served in, which during times of crisis is even more important. We had blood drives and book drives and volunteering a product that they were giving out to food banks. And we had the bottom left one is we are so privileged to work with hundreds of dentists in Arizona each year. They come together, they give something called a Dental Mission of Mercy event, where they give homeless individuals about $2 million in free dental care, so dentures and root canals and all sorts of stuff. And with COVID, they couldn't do that, but they were able to donate hundreds and hundreds of dollars of masks and PPE to healthcare workers in Arizona and California and New Mexico, because they weren't using them for their event. They were able to give them to all these nurses and hospitals that needed that personal protective equipment. And then we also, we had a lot of schools here in Arizona and New Mexico and Texas that a lot of kids were virtual. A lot of kids didn't know what was going on with school. So we had some of our clients donate hundreds and hundreds of backpacks and school supplies to these kids in underprivileged apartment communities. And this is one of the cute young gals that we got to hang out with. We were doing water fights and giving them popsicles and all sorts of things. We had the firefighters there and made a really fun back to school event for kids that had a lot of uncertainty this year. They didn't know if they'd be going back. They didn't know if they'd have to be online. They didn't know if they were getting a computer from their school or if they were just gonna have to figure it out. So we were able, with our clients, to provide a lot of stability during an uncertain time for them. And I really feel like you've all probably heard the saying, as we lift each other, we rise together. But I came across this photo of starlings, and it's called a murmuration. I don't know if you've heard that. It's different than a migration. And a lot of times as we go through challenges, we might just be trying to migrate, getting from point A to point B in our personal lives or as a company. But I think the starling is a really cool example because they create beautiful shapes and designs in the air as they fly. And they don't just fly to point A to point B, they work together and they create these amazing designs and beautiful pictures. And I think that that's what we can do in our individual lives. And as you all become leaders, or as you become even greater leaders than you already are, I think that you can look for ways to prepare, listen to those around you, build really strong teams, and then do good, even when things are crazy even when you don't know what the next step is. Don't be afraid to create beauty and to do good and lift those around you, just like these starlings. All right, I kept that pretty tight. Do you all have any questions for me?
So for the Q&A, you can just unmute yourself and ask your question, and that's it. So don't be shy.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So for you, as when you're going through these crises, what is the number one issue that you find that companies seem to struggle with more than anything else?
That is a really good question. You know, a lot of our work, COVID was obviously this year, but unfortunately it's issues with leadership a lot of times. So it is, there's a lot of impropriety that goes on. We've dealt with everything from embezzlement to inappropriate sexual relations to just really a difference in like a CEO wanting to go a different direction from the board because they weren't communicating with things. And so those can really devastate a team. If you have a CEO or a CFO or COO, anyone in that kind of that C-suite, we call them the chiefs of this and that, if they're doing something that is really counterintuitive or really goes against what the company stands for, that makes all the employees lose faith in the company or lose faith in their leadership. And so trying to regain that trust, immediately getting rid of an individual that legally you have to follow legal protocols, but demonstrating to your team that that's not who you stand for, that's not what you stand for, is really important for the leaders that remain, and making sure that there's not that disconnect. That's another issue too, is where you see leaders say, we want to do this and be this, and we want all our employees to live this way, but they're not living it. And so your mission and vision, it has to reflect who the leaders are, or you need to get new leaders, because you can't fake that. Maybe you can fake that to your customers for a while, but your employees know, because they're on those Zoom calls, they're in those meetings, they see how you treat people. And if you say, we're going to treat all of our customers with respect and dignity, and we care about them, but you know, you see your boss run over a dog or whatever, that's a little dramatic, but that you have to be consistent with the things that you're saying that you're going to do. Great question.
Excuse me, I have a question as well. My question is kind of different, but if you spoke a lot about thanking your team members and making sure you guys have a good vibe pretty much in the workforce. I'm leading a team currently in my class for a project that's similar. It's like we're doing simulations for companies. And one of the things that I recognize as well is that no one really asks for rewards. It just asks to be recognized. And this is my question, what is a situation which you kind of regret not having thanked the person and it's caused a detriment to your project?
That is a good
I don't know if
question.
that makes sense.
No, it does. I think earlier on in my career, sometimes I was a younger individual managing people that were older than me. And sometimes I think I felt like if I thanked them too much or I was at their level, I wasn't really being a leader. And I've learned that the opposite is true. And so I really try to be more of a servant leader now. So if we're setting up for an event, I'm not in my suit and my high heels directing people around. I'm getting down there and working with them. I'm expressing gratitude every day when we leave the office after any event, from everyone from the intern to, you know, the highest level employees. So I think taking the time to acknowledge people at every level is super important, and interacting with and acknowledging someone that you might deem as the most junior person on the team, that doesn't bring you down a level. That shows that you truly are a leader and you're looking to recognize all the gifts of the team. So that is something I would Make sure that you're acknowledging every member of the team, no matter what level they are, whatever that contribution is, and to recognize too that people contribute in different ways. I'm a very, you ask me 5 questions, I'll give you 5 answers right away. I don't always need to think about it for 10 days and come up with a response, but acknowledge people that think and act in different ways, and the way you lead is really important, because a lot of times the person who takes 10 days to come up with an answer, that's the best answer, and we need to listen to them and give space for them to contribute in a way that can help guide the team. Don't overlook them just because they think or contribute in a different way than you as a leader.
Thank you so much for that answer.
Thank you. You guys are making me think. The other thing is, it's a lot easier to give advice to our clients than for me to live it. That's something I found. We'll do these big presentations on culture and gratitude, and then I come back to my team and I'm like, oh, I need to do some of this that I'm telling all my clients to do. So it's a lot easier to tell people what to do than it is to live it as a leader.
Thank you, Heather. I got a question for you as well. So actually I have 2 questions. So one is, so you talked a lot about improving your image with the clients and the community and everything, and increasing unity. But my question is, like, how can you measure that after you implement, for example, a campaign or like a program? How can you measure that?
So,
and yeah, sorry.
Okay. So for the first one is there's a lot of ways online. So we do a lot with social media management and reputation management. So you can look at your review scores if you're someone who provides a service and you're actually looking at your review scores on Yelp or Google or whatever tool that you're using. And a lot of companies will actually track that. It's kind of expensive, but tracking your review scores is one way to do that. They also, you can do survey data with your customers or with your employees. So a lot of employees, even if it's informal, they'll do a survey every year and they'll ask the same questions every year. And I might be, how does leadership communicate with me? How do I feel appreciated by leadership? Do I feel operations are, most effective? But you'll come up with a set of questions that you want to measure, and it might be really simple, and you'll do that every year so you can start to gauge areas that you need to improve and areas that you've seen that you're really strong in too. So digitally, you can also do stuff too with your website. I'm trying to think of anything that would be really, really inexpensive, other than just getting kind of ongoing feedback and tracking that. But however you do it, whether it's a formal survey or whether you're looking at like your review scores online, create a benchmark, and then you just do the same thing each year, whether it's a really formal third-party survey company or you're just sending something out, SurveyMonkey, by yourself, or it's like a free tool. You can do that to your customers or your employees on a regular basis and start to track that. So it can be really expensive or it can be pretty cheap, but just make sure that you do the same thing and that you do it on an ongoing basis so that you have data that you can track and measure.
Thank you. And sorry, my other question is, so now you're in a very high leadership position, but how can you compare and share a little bit about your experience of being a recent grad, of leaving like college and finding your first job to getting to where you are right now, and some advices for us that will be graduating very soon?
I went to NAU, which is in Arizona. It's Northern Arizona University. It's Flagstaff. It was a great school because we had great professors. And from what Becca has told me, you are blessed with the same thing. You have great professors that care about you. And the school is one where there's opportunities to connect with each other and build relationships. And so I think that is already a great, you have some great tools in your arsenal for graduation. The other thing was a couple kind of random things. I graduated in December instead of spring. That improved my job seeking opportunities. So I graduated a half a semester earlier. We figured some stuff out with my schedule, and I'd taken some AP classes, but I graduated at an off time. So that's weird, but that actually really helped me at the job searching stage because I wasn't applying at the same time for jobs as everyone else. The other thing is internships do internships, do mentorships, do shadow days, anything that anyone will let you do in your chosen career field. I did internships and had some good connections, but I should have done more shadow days. And at those internships, I should have taken everyone out to coffee and everyone out to lunch and made a connection with everyone at the company, because those relationships really, once people get to know your personality and the way your brain thinks, if it's people that you connect with, they'll remember you and they'll want to send you opportunities. Most of the opportunities we have now at our firm are referrals from past clients and past colleagues that I worked with. And if I would have done a better job of networking and through my internships and my first couple of years on the job, I would have even had more. And sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm too busy and I've got all this work to do, and I'm working weekends and everything, because I worked crazy hours at the beginning of my career right out of college. But I wish I would have taken a little bit more time to do that networking, to take people out to lunch, to pick their brain about things that they enjoyed about their job, and that would have been a real benefit to me. I'm trying to think of anything else. I tried to also have things on my resume that weren't the same as everyone else. That might sound weird, but maybe my internship was a little bit different. I applied for some other awards when I graduated. I just tried to, I wasn't the top of my class, but I was the outstanding PR graduate at NAU, which isn't that big of a deal, but it was something that I could put on my resume that was different. And some of my internships, I had a really high profile internship with the American Cancer Society, and then I had a very low profile internship with the local bookstore, but having some different types of internships really helped me. And then mine is purely communication. So I made sure I had a really strong work samples and examples of writing. And if you're doing any sort of communication degree, making sure that your social media profiles, really any job, even if it's illegal, I guarantee you your employers are looking at all of your social media profiles. So clean those up. Hopefully none of the BYU students have anything too crazy on their profiles, but your profile should be pretty benign. And just know that future employers are going to look at those social media profiles and they're going to gauge fit for their culture. They're going to gauge whether you're mature enough to represent their brand. Because they know as soon as you start working for them, their customers or their clients are going to look at your profiles too. So you might want to mark all of your profiles private, and then do one that's a little bit more professional, where you just share, the cats that you're saving and the books that you're reading to small children, or whatever, your charitable efforts or the awards that you've recently won. But look at your social media profiles to make sure those are cleaned up before you start applying for jobs. I love these questions, Sam. You're making me think. What did I do? What should I have done different? I kept applying until I got a job because my dad said I couldn't live at his house. So that was one thing too. I kept applying until I got a job.
Hi, Heather. I really liked what you said about how valuable feedback is. So I was just wondering, with a team I'm working with right now, I'm starting to notice how when we give each other feedback, everyone is just being really nice, and it's kind of preventing us from being more honest in our feedback. So how can I create a more comfortable environment so that everyone can express their concerns?
So that's a really interesting question. Is this a student team that you're working on group projects, or is this a team of employees and there's a definite boss and kind of chain of command?
This is a on-campus internship, so I'm working with other student interns.
So Joy, you're gonna have to, that's gonna be a tough call. There's some things that if you're not the boss and it's not employees that you are paying and you're worried about their long-term professional growth, sometimes you have to suck it up. Like if you are the boss, you have opportunities to give reviews every 6 months and every year, where the employee is coming to you. It's part of your regular employment process where you give them feedback and they give you feedback. Sometimes it's hard to hear what they tell you about you being a good or a bad boss, but that's a really formal part of an employment agreement. If it's a group of peers, with interns, you know, that's tough because some people do not take feedback how they should. And where, like if you said something negative about me, but we're peers, is that going to help us get to our ultimate goal? Do you know what I mean? If I come to you and I say, Joy, I really want some help on how to do this, or I'm really looking for ideas of this, or I've noticed that every time I talk to Sam, he like looks the other way. Like, do you have any advice for me on how I can communicate better, or make sure my emails look more professional, or that I get this job done on time? I think that it's hard unless they're seeking advice from you in a peer-to-peer group. Yeah, I just think that you might have a lot of hurt feelings. That's interesting. I work on a lot of committees. You're making me think now. I work on a lot of professional committees, and we rarely give each other negative feedback on this peer-to-peer group. A lot of times that type of what you would consider constructive criticism is typically coming when we're seeking it from customers or when we're seeking it from employees, not in peer-to-peer interaction. So that is a tough one. But you may be able to open up and just say, instead of just asking for general feedback, ask for something specific, like, hey, you know, this is something I've been wondering about. Does anyone have some specific ideas of how I can improve this? And maybe they'll learn from your example and also look for ways to do that. But you have to tread really lightly, giving peers advice that they don't solicit. So good luck.
Thank you so much
for your internship, and then you can be the boss and give all sorts of advice to people.
I was also wondering, when you talked about researching all the possible negative outcomes, what are some resources or sources you use to do this research?
So for each client, we look at issues that they've had, but we also look at competitors, and we look at local, regional, and national trends. So we've done a ton of crisis training for, we do public relations for their luxury multifamily apartments. So they have like 70 different luxury apartments in Arizona and Nevada. So we look at the other apartments that they admire, and we look at the issues they've had, and then we look at national trends. So what's happening for the same type of business in Georgia or in Washington or in Florida. So looking at your same business and looking at issues that competitors have had, especially if you're a newer business, is a really good indicator. I mean, no one saw they saw COVID coming, but no one could have anticipated what was going to happen, you know, in its entirety with COVID. But the teams that already had crisis plans in place already had some backup for crazy weather. They already had some online resources. They already had some training in place. So it wasn't as hard for them to deal with, because they're like, well, we're going to use our hurricane plan and our, you know, electrical outage plan and whatever other emergency plans they had. And they were able to start using some of those while they figured everything out to put their people online a lot quicker than companies that didn't have general crisis plans going on at all. So yeah, looking at competitors and looking at national or international trends within your industry, and you can pull up every negative news story about someone in your industry and say, okay, we need to prepare for shooting, fire, gas leak. We literally have messaging for a client that goes through everything horrible that could happen at an apartment, and we have messaging already prepared that's run through the legal team, and the teams know what to do in those situations, how to respond to their residents, how to respond to the rest of the community, what they say for the team members. They know what mental health professionals are available for their team members if they witness something horrific. Like, they have that all in place so that when horrible things happen, you're not scrambling with what to do. You can actually try to like listen and be there for your employees that are going through something really, really horrible. So that's where you want to be. You want to be able to deal with the human interaction and have all the operations and messaging all figured out, run through your legal team, and you're just ready to actually be there for your customers or your employees when they're having something difficult happen.
Thank you so much, Heather.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You know, after all these hard questions, I thought I'd ask an easy one. Sorry, Savi. What do you like most about your job?
I love that it's never the same. So I don't think I have ADHD, but I do rise to the occasion with challenges. I was a procrastinator in college and be the one to put off my paper to the last minute. And then I would say a lot of prayers. And if I studied, that stuff would come back to me. But sometimes I'd write something brilliant or coming up with just a great idea. And sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I crashed and burned. But I love that I get to do something different all the time. We have a bunch of different clients. So I may be delivering donuts to teachers at 5 a.m. and then I may be going to the water park and telling people about how Six Flags is going to keep you safe during COVID with their bagless checks and their masks and their temperature checks or whatever it is. And we work a lot with the local media and on social media. So it's always interesting to kind of see those trends and help them have good stories to talk about too. We do the crisis for clients, but a lot of our work is the positive stories with local media and national media. And so it feels great, like the backpack one, you know, we do a lot of crisis, but to share those stories and to hopefully to spread a little bit of good is nice too. And also I've worked at agencies where I just had to take whatever clients came. It's nice to be able to choose my clients. And so we're really blessed to have clients that are smart and they actually care about their employees and they actually care about their customers and they're trying to do good in the community. And that's, I feel like it's rare to be able to choose those that you do work for. So I feel that that's a huge blessing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question, and it's a little bit more industry specific. So I also work at a water park here on Oahu and then back home as well. And so I was wondering what has been the biggest game changer? What has created the biggest shift for your team dynamic working at water parks that maybe a lot of other places don't do?
So we've been, the Phoenix Water Park has been my client for 10 years and it's gone through probably 4 different ownership changes. Right now it's Six Flags. Before it was a Gold Coast operator out of Australia. So we would do all of our calls at like 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., which is always really interesting. But the safety aspect has been really interesting. You probably know what cryptosporidium is if you've worked at a water park. So we had a big issue with that in Arizona 4 or 5 years ago. And luckily I had really good relationships with the Department of Health with some prior work. And that made a big difference because we would get a heads up on, so for those who don't have to do water park PR, if you have a crisis that involves the public health, like if there's a virus that is being seen in different water areas and splash pads and lakes and pools in an area, the Department of Health, whatever state you're in or whatever region you're in, they become really involved in the operations and they decide if things can open or close, and it really affects the water park. So we were fortunate. I had that relationship with members of their team that they would give me a heads up on new regulation coming out or new press release coming out or new findings that came out so that our client could help to prepare what they were going to say and what they were going to do. Because normally, like you guys may have seen this, if the governor of your state comes out with a new COVID regulation, they're not, some states may be better, but our state wasn't that great about giving every industry that was affected a heads up. So literally would have a 3 p.m. press conference by our governor saying, I'm closing down this, 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 and this, or these are the new regulations for this, this, or this. And then all the news would call our clients for those industries and say, what are you going to do about that? What do you think about that? What's going on? So it was really difficult for people to plan. So for this instance, where we already had a relationship with the Department of Health, I was given a heads up, we could come up with messaging. So making relationships with any sort of regulatory agencies or government groups that you can, that might close you down or open you up or affect you, that saved my bacon. So any types of relationships you can make with those that make decisions that impact your client, that's a huge deal. And also understanding safety. So We had some operations managers that changed, but I've been the spokesperson for the water park for 8 years. So I had to quickly understand, what are they doing for safety? Are they doing the best things? Is this what every other water park is doing in the nation? Like, where are the gaps like that my client should be doing, so that I don't get a call from Channel 12 and say, Heather, I heard that Six Flags in Georgia does this, this, and this. Why the heck aren't you doing that in Phoenix? Don't you care about people? Why are you wanting people to die? Like, that sounds extreme, but a lot of times you'd get those really interesting questions from reporters where they're trying to bait you. So having the relationships with those that can impact you, and then making sure you understand the things that you're speaking about or communicating about, is really important in public relations or crisis communications. Good luck. If you, I think we're going to put my email up there. If you have any specific water park questions, let me know, because I know a lot about water park communications, for good or for bad. And they're one of my favorite clients. We've got a great GM and great director of marketing, so that helps too. Good luck.
Thank you.
Sorry, Sav, you had a question?
Kind of forgot myself there. Yes, I do have a question. So you talked about being able to connect with your team and with your clients through online activities. From a HR standpoint, what happens when your teammates and your clients get tired of online events? How would you go about solving that?
That is a great question. And I think that's part of the listening. So you've got to ask them what would be meaningful to you, because people get so sick of Zoom and they get so sick of the online. Like you said, maybe it's we're sending a movie tickets, or we're sending a code to watch this movie, and we're sending you a box of popcorn, we're sending stuff to your home, or we're sending you we do a lot of virtual lunches where we're sending them Uber Eats or whatever to do that. You guys probably aren't drinking, but we have clients that will do virtual happy hours where they'll actually do a tasting of beer, and they'll actually send the beer to all of their employees or all of their customers. And then they'll like give their feedback on, they have some online, or they have some internal like social media platforms with the company that they'll be sharing this or that. So we do send stuff to houses. We have done some small gatherings where we would do, depending on the restrictions on the state, if 10 people are allowed, we will find some areas or some ways for them to do 10 people at a time, or going to throw axes, or 10 people at a time, or you know what I mean, or are doing a small bowling thing for a charity, or 10 people at a time are going to volunteer at the animal shelter because our company is really big on dogs or cats, whatever it is. So yeah, you have to get creative. But the best way to do that is to actually listen to what your employees care about and what they're interested in. And it might not actually have something to do with your vision or your mission. It might be that all of your employees love running. So you sponsor Girls on the Run, and then you guys all at 5 a.m., you all go running on different trails, and then you connect that way, or you share that with each other. That doesn't really have anything to do with you selling, purses or whatever you're doing, but it's a way that if you're listening to your employees and what they care about, you can find ways and some common threads to kind of bring them together. And it's tough with online, and you're right, people are sick of this. I wish I was in person hanging out with all of you. And your background is amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Heather. From what you said earlier, I have a question for you. You mentioned something about doing something that the employers care about. What if there are a lot of different groups of employers that care about different things? How does the company assign like budgets to do things that everyone cares about?
So that is a good question. And that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges for HR teams and communications team, is to find something that everyone can enjoy. And sometimes companies try to make it really, really complicated. And I don't think it always has to be complicated. We did sounds really goofy, but sometimes the really simple things are the things that people can connect with. And so we had a leadership training where this was before COVID, so they could actually meet together, but we did a bunch of team building activities, and one of them was we grouped people together in different teams that don't normally work together, like all different levels, and they were given a bunch of Legos, and they wrote some different values on them that were important to them, and they had to construct their own homes. It was just for like a real estate client, but it was so cool. And people that you'd think wouldn't be that involved, like all sorts of people wanted to help with design, and they're putting their bricks in, and they're designing all sorts of crazy things with these like Lego houses. And this was like a team of 500 employees, and we got these really cool different structures and people interacting in really different ways than they would have. You've got people that are normal in the office, and you've got people that are normally like service teams and housekeepers, and it was just a really different dynamic in what they work with every day. So I would do some surveying for employees and find out what they're interested in, what they care about, if they have any causes that are important to them, any charities that they already have an affinity for. And then sometimes it may be just providing, okay, we've got 5 options. We can do yoga at sunrise. We can volunteer at the dog shelter. We can read books to 3rd graders, or we can go bowling for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Maybe you give them 5 or 6 options and you send it out, and the one that gets the most votes wins. I mean, sometimes it's something simple like that where you can't please everyone, but you try to provide a variety of things so that you can hit as many of those things throughout the year as you can. And maybe something's bigger and some things are smaller, but if you get that feedback at the beginning, you can know, all right, I haven't done anything that Adam has liked. I haven't done anything that Becca has liked. Let's look and see as opportunities are coming up. Maybe Becca's really into dogs, but we ended up going bowling, but the charity that we donate to the end of the year is going to be animal rights. You know, so you look at different ways to hit kind of their needs and their interests, even if it's not necessarily through that team building activity. But that is surveying your employees and finding out information about what they care about. One of the things we do whenever someone is hired is we send out a whole list of how they like to be acknowledged and appreciated and receive awards. And some people like small gifts, and some people like handwritten notes, and some people like to be recognized in front of their peers, and some people would just like a day off to get away from you, and some people say they like all 5, you know. But we gather some of that information, and sometimes we can do that, and sometimes, you know, it's crazy and they can't have a day off that day. But trying to get information about the way they like to feel appreciated, and the way they like to celebrate, and the way that they like to connect with others is important. Because like you said, there's also really different personalities. Some people would not be comfortable doing like an improv day where everyone has to do improv. Like they would literally want to die, and they might quit your team because they don't want to do that. So you have to be sensitive with ideas that you think are great and exciting, and check with other members of your team to make sure that you're not going to push someone away even further when you're trying to pull people together. So it's tough. It's tough when you have a big group and you have a lot of diverse opinions, but that listening thing, that's kind of your surefire answer for everything. You guys are, you are, a bunch of you are already leaders, but I'm very impressed, and I want to hire all of you so you can teach me.
Hi,
Thank
Heather.
you, Heather.
I just,
Yep.
oh,
Okay,
oh,
that's
sorry.
okay. So we are about to end. So I guess we have time for one more question from Ula, and then we're going to have a closing prayer by Savarovic Pozo. She's the president for our BYU Management Society chapter, and she's also a junior student from Fiji, major in HR and also supply chain. Okay.
Oh, sorry. My question was just, during the COVID time, have you seen companies, has there ever been a time where you've experienced failure in helping companies, and how have you come back from that and boosted morale for employees?
Yeah, so this will happen to you a lot if you're in any sort of consultant role. you have to learn not to get offended or not to kind of pin all your hopes and dreams on a presentation. So we do proposals all the time where our team will do hours and hours worth of research on things. And then we'll do this great presentation and we're all excited for all these fun activities they can do to strengthen culture and improve morale. And then they sit on it for like 6 months and nothing happens and nothing happens. And we're reminding them about how great ideas and how brilliant we are and nothing happens. And then they have some like big issue where they have to fire their CFO and their COO because of improper relationships. And we remind them that they should have done all this stuff before all this crap happened. But you have to adjust to clients. So if you have all these great, wonderful ideas and it's not fitting either their budget or they just don't have time to do it, we act as a consultant. So I have to like suck it up, swallow my pride, not get too married to any of my brilliant ideas. And I have to adjust to what is going to work for them. So they can't do this like magnificent things we came up with. What can they do? How can we meet them to where they are? And then a lot of times they've made leadership adjustments where they've come back and said, hey, you know that huge proposal you did 3 years ago that you put blood, sweat, and tears in? We're ready for that now. You know, let's look at that again. Let's bring it up. And so we really try to be partners with the client and let our egos go, even if we think we're geniuses about something. We're not running their company. So even though we become really familiar with the things that they're doing, we also have to give them a little bit of grace and be very humble and try to meet them where they're at. And when they are ready to use our brilliance, hopefully they will. And if they're not ever ready to use our great ideas, we try to help them the best we can. We had a lot of stuff in the spring as we were talking with clients about things that they could do and ways that they could make sure that they were being more inclusive of their clients and maybe their team members. And some listened and some were slower to listen. And that slide we talked about with representation and talking to them about as they were coming up with responses to different situations, making sure that they included people that were representative of what was going on was really important. And it couldn't be a bunch of people that looked like me responding to things to people that didn't look like me. And so sometimes clients listen to that and sometimes they don't. And we do the best we can to give them good advice. And sometimes they take it and sometimes they don't. And if it's a client that repeatedly doesn't take your advice and you really feel like they're going in a different direction than the type of company we want to represent, sometimes we do a amicable breakup and it's not you, it's me. And we encourage them to maybe work with another firm if it's repeatedly where they're just not taking any of our advice. You know, I feel like they're wasting their money and we want them to be with a partner that they'll listen to. And we want to talk to people that like to hear us. So that happens pretty rarely, but there were some situations the last year where we maybe worked with a different member of the team that was more receptive or changed our approach so that we could help guide them to maybe a better place or a place that was better, that they would be able to retain their employees and their customers. So that's tough. It's tough. Good question.
Thank you, Ula, for that great question. And before I turn the time to Savi, just would like to thank Heather for accepting the invitation to speak to us and for this great message. And I will be posting Heather's email on the chat so you can maybe follow up with a few more questions or reach out to her. And actually, let me do it right now. Okay, hold on just a second.
Kind of a mouthful, Sam.
Yeah, okay, so it's there. And we'll be posting the recording as well for this event. And again, thank you, Heather. Thank you for your time, and we do appreciate it. I learned so much, and I am just very excited to apply some of the things in my job, and I'm very excited to also get into the workforce after graduation and try to apply some of the principles I just learned. So thank you.
Well, thank you. This has made my day, and you all are brilliant, and I wish you the best in your careers You all are going to make incredible leaders. You're taking time to do stuff like this. This is the extra stuff that shows you really care, and it's going to set you apart from your peers as you're applying for jobs and applying for promotions and becoming even stronger leaders. And I'm excited for you, and thank you for this opportunity to be with you tonight.
Thank you, thank you. And now I'll turn the time to Savi for the closing prayer.
Dear Heavenly